It's Rebecca. Welcome to today's live stream trip report. What I like to do is after we finish leading a big group trip, what I like to do is after we finish leading a big group trip here at Hike Like a Woman, I like to just hop on our YouTube channel and do a live stream and tell you all about the trip because, you know, we go on really cool trips and sometimes you're not able to join us for these trips. We only have a few limited seats on each trip. And so I like to just bring the trip to you here on YouTube. So welcome back. If you've joined us before, welcome back. If this is your first time joining us for a trip report, welcome. Usually I like to do these in the evenings, but there's just a lot going on in the evenings. So I was like, we're going to do it in the afternoon. So thank you for being here. And if you can't stay for the whole thing, it's totally cool because this will be up on our YouTube channel and you'll be able to enjoy it for a long time. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get started today. We are talking about our group trip to Iceland. I just got back a few days ago. I'm still trying to get caught up on sleep and all the things. But let's dive right in and talk about our trip to Iceland. Now, before I went to Iceland and while I was putting this trip together, I didn't know much about Iceland. So before we dive right into the trip, I want to just give some background on some of the places we went and some of the things that we saw. So then when I show you the pictures, that'll make a little more sense to you. So this is a map of Iceland and there are 3 circles drawn on this map. You'll see the big white circle there is the Vatnal Glacier. That is a huge glacier. It takes up 8% of the country of Iceland. It is just a huge, massive glacier. Those other little white spots on the map are also glaciers. So overall, about 10% of Iceland is covered with glaciers. And we're not going to get too nerdy here, but that's a lot. You'll see Reykjavik down there right in the center, that middle circle. That's kind of where we started and ended our trip. And then you'll see that little peninsula that's up there right on that other side of the map. We also spent some time on that peninsula. And so what we did was we started our trip in Reykjavik and then we traveled along that southern coast there right up to the glacier. Then we backtracked back to Reykjavik and then we took another side trip up to the peninsula and then back to Reykjavik. It was a lot of driving. I don't even know how many kilometers we drove, but it was a lot of driving. So I'll just leave it there and let's talk a little bit more about Iceland. So I also did not know that Iceland does not have mosquitoes, bears, or snakes. It's just this very isolated spot. And I was told that it doesn't have mosquitoes because it's cold and it's very windy. Now, I live in a cold, windy spot and we still have mosquitoes. So I don't know if that's the truth, but if you're an expert on Iceland or mosquitoes out there, let me know. We're going to talk about Icelandic horses in a little bit. And Icelandic horses are pretty unique. They don't look like horses do out here in the Rocky Mountains where I live. But they are pure breed horses and they've been isolated for over 1,000 years. And because their horse population is isolated, they don't have any diseases. So that's pretty interesting. We talked a little bit about Reykjavik earlier where we started and finished our trip. Reykjavik is the northernmost capital city in the world, which is pretty cool. And 1/3 of the population of Iceland lives in or around Reykjavik. And overall, Iceland has a population of 350,000 people or 8 people per square mile. And when we were in Reykjavik, it didn't feel like a big capital city to me. It felt like a beautiful city right there on the water. Also, Iceland is interesting. They are part of NATO, but they don't have a military. Their police officers don't carry weapons. They don't have McDonald's in Iceland. They used to, but they got rid of McDonald's, but they do have Domino's Pizza. And beer was banned in Iceland from 1908 to 1989. And there are over 30 active volcanoes in Iceland, probably more active volcanoes than that, but that's just a rough estimate. Most people from Iceland can trace their genealogy all the way back to the Vikings, and genealogy is a really cool part of just Icelandic culture. Our tour guide was able to tell us all of his ancestors all the way back, which was pretty cool. And there are two tectonic plates that go through Iceland, and we're going to talk about those in just a second. And 99.6% of Iceland's energy is renewable. They really use all of that underground geothermic activity from that volcanic activity to do things like heat their homes and heat their water. And it's just really interesting to see how sustainable Iceland was. So I had no idea. I didn't know any of those things before I traveled to Iceland. And now that I've been there and seen it, I can't wait to go back. So let's talk about the trip. That's a little bit about Iceland. That's what I learned on the trip and before the trip. But before the trip even starts here at Hike Like a Woman, we do this thing where we set up a Slack channel. And in that Slack channel, we start to build friendships and we start to get to know each other. We coordinate travel. We say, hey, I'm going to be on this flight or you're going to be on this flight. And before this trip, we got a lot of activity in our Slack channel when some of the girls went early on our trip and then a massive storm blew into Reykjavik. And so we had half of the group already in Reykjavik, the other half of the group en route, and all of a sudden flights are being canceled and postponed and delayed, and the whole southern part of the country was under this red flag warning, which is this huge deal, I guess, in Iceland with really severe winds and really severe snowstorms. So we were worried that we weren't even going to be able to get into the country. But we were lucky because we all actually made it in on time for our welcome dinner. There was a little break in the storm. Planes were able to land and we were all united. Something really cool to note about the women on this trip is we had 13 women plus me. 8 of the women on this trip were returning trip participants. For 4 of them, this was their second Hike Like a Woman trip. For 4 more of them, this was their third Hike Like a Woman trip. And that is really cool. I think most of the time we have a 48% return rate on our trips, but to have so many return participants on this particular trip was really neat. We also had my childhood friend who was my next door neighbor growing up who brought a friend. We had one of our previous trip participants bring her daughter. And it was just really cool to see all of these different friendships form with women who'd been on different trips with me before in the past. And one of my goals with Hike Like a Woman trips is when you sign up and when you join us for a trip or an outdoor adventure, I want you to feel like you already know someone, like you already have a friend. And that is really just like a cool part of our community is I'm afraid that once you go on a trip with us, you're just going to want to keep going on more trips with us. So that's pretty cool. This was us, our first night. You can see we're all bundled up because we are getting ready to head out into a blizzard to go eat dinner. And I started to really not trust our guide at this point because he said that our restaurant was just a short walk from the hotel, but it wasn't. It was a long walk through the snowstorm, but we all bonded over walking in the snowstorm that night to go get dinner. And then they had a drink at the restaurant called the Viking's Kiss, which was super delicious. So we went to bed early that night because the next day we had a long drive ahead of us. You can see our route here. So we're starting at Reykjavik and then we're headed north a little bit. We're going to check out some stuff and then we start to head south along the coast. So our first day, we actually started by hitting a grocery store to get snacks for the trip. If you've been on a Hike Like a Woman trip, you know that snacks are very, very important. We also loved checking out some of the Icelandic treats. Black licorice is huge in Iceland. They had something called a corny bar, which was really good. This was a particular sparkling water that I thought was delicious, and I just posted the picture because it said, "Let's get physical," F-I-Z-Z, which I thought was pretty hilarious. But you can see our van there. That was our home sweet home for hours and hours and hours. I think we spent half this trip in that van together driving. The first stop on this itinerary today was the Thingvellir National Park, and I'm going to apologize. I'm going to say most of these words incorrectly. Icelandic is a really difficult language to understand, to listen to speak. Most people in Iceland speak English because Iceland is such a small country. English and usually a Scandinavian language like Danish are taught in elementary school. So most people in Iceland that we encountered spoke really good English. Anyway, side note. So we visited this first, our first spot was the Thingvellir National Park. This is, I think it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I'm not quite sure. But what's really cool about this place is that it was actually the Parliament location for the Vikings from, I got to look at my notes here, 930 to 1798. And you can see that rocky ledge. I'll show you another picture right here of that rocky ledge. You can see that rocky ledge. This is the place where these two tectonic plates that I mentioned earlier actually separate, and it produces this big, gigantic rock wall. What I found really interesting about this place was not necessarily the tectonic plates, but some of the history that's a little bit sad and a lot tragic. So this was the place where Parliament met for all of those centuries, and it was also the place of 15 hangings, 30 beheadings, and right here, this body of water that you're looking at, this is called the Drowning Pool, and 18 women were executed in this pool of water. Our guide told us that they were executed because they had killed their children, which I can't even comprehend that. But the way they were executed was whoever was in charge of the execution would put a sack over their head, and then they would push them into the water, and then they would hold down the bodies with a stick until the women died. And I just found that so tragic that here we're looking at this beautiful, rugged, gorgeous landscape, but it's actually a place where a lot of tragedy, at least in my Western mind, occurred. But anyway, it was a really neat place to visit. But it was also tragic and sad and amazing, and all of these big emotions there as we're reading about this place. Of course, we had to stop after we visited that national park and check out some Icelandic horses. You can see they're kind of they're short. They have a lot of hair, really cool horses. We fed them some cookies, some horse cookies, and then we headed off to check out the Gullfoss waterfall. I might as well just call this trip like the Waterfall and Hot Springs tour, because that's what it was. But you can see these gigantic waterfalls, and I will that's the only picture I have of the waterfall, but just gorgeous, just massive. And then right here, we checked out this cool geothermic area, these geysers. We walked through this place that actually reminded me so much of Yellowstone, and I grew up just outside of Yellowstone. I don't live too far from Yellowstone, but we got to see a geyser erupt several times, and then the ground was just steaming with all of this underground volcanic activity. It was beautiful there, and watching the geyser erupt was really, really cool. But then, because we were on the Waterfall and Hot Springs tour, of course, we had to go check out our very first hot springs of the trip. This is the Secret Lagoon. Something that's really cool and noteworthy about the Secret Lagoon is that it's actually the oldest public swimming pool in Iceland. And we got to go there, and they let you have drinks in the pool. So that was pretty cool. We enjoyed a nice soak, which felt really good after all of our traveling and snowstorm stress and all the things. So that was just like a really peaceful way to spend the afternoon. We got to our hotel, and then we woke up the next morning, and we had a lot more driving to do. Here you can see where we started, and now we're going to drive along the coastline, and we are going to finish up the day someplace very beautiful, and we'll get there. So our first stop was, of course, another waterfall. This waterfall was really neat because there were all of these little trails and pathways and different waterfalls you could see. So I'll show you some of those different pathways, and all the pathways were very well maintained. I think our group could have spent like 3 hours there walking around all of these paths and exploring around these waterfalls, but we were kind of pressed on time, and this is definitely a place I want to go back and take my family, because I just feel like there's so much exploring left to do. and we only scratched the surface. The next place that we went is a really cool place, and you might have heard about it before, but it's called the Black Sand Beach. And on this particular day, the beach was quite dangerous. You see the yellow light there. That's a warning light. There's lots of safety concerns when you visit the Black Sand Beach. There's sneaker waves, so waves that will just come up out of nowhere. There's really steep cliffs. There's really strong currents and undertows. So this is a beach that's open to the public, but it's quite dangerous. And our guide just gave us so many safety briefings that we were like, okay, man, we promise we're not going to climb on the cliffs or go in the water, and we'll keep our distance from the waves. But you can see here this beautiful black sand on the beach, the beautiful sky. You can kind of see the waves, and you can see those columns out there, those rock columns. That's basalt, and just so pretty. But what I liked, like the coastline was really cool, but there's also this amazing cave. You can see the basalt here, these cave walls, super gorgeous. And it was fun to just walk into the cave. And if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you might recognize this cave. It's the Dragon Glass Cave. Just a really fascinating place. And it's not far from the little village of Vik. And Vik has a really nice kind of mall type area with a restaurant and a snack bar and some shopping. And Vik is just a really cute place. So if you're headed to Iceland, I would recommend maybe just base camping in Vik for a few days, because there was a lot of beautiful things to see around Vik. Okay, so after we visited the Black Sand Beach, it was time to get back in the van and on the road. And we started to drive across a lava field, and there was there's all sorts of volcanic activity in Iceland. I don't remember when this particular volcano erupted that caused the field that we drove across. I want to say early 1900s. But what you're looking at here in this middle picture is a bridge. There was also a big flood in 1996 that took out a gigantic bridge. And that's some remnants of the bridge. If you follow us on Instagram, you notice that we did a really cool music video dance right at this location. But just mountains in the background, lava field, very cool scenery, cool backdrop. But then we got to what I considered one of the most special places on the trip. This is Diamond Beach. So you see this black beach, this black, just like volcanic ash. It's not sand, it's just like a black ashy beach. And then we saw these gigantic icebergs, just very shiny, clear, sparkly. They looked like diamonds covering the entire beach, which is why it's called Diamond Beach. And our guide got us there right at sunset, which was gorgeous to watch the sunset around the beach. And then if you just walk up a little ways, there is the Glacier Lagoon, and you can see these glaciers, these icebergs. Ice on this lagoon is over 1,000 years old, but you can see how crystal clear the water was, how beautiful it was. We saw seals, we saw birds, and it was so magical to just walk up and down the beach to check out Diamond Beach and then to check out the lagoon. And even though it was cold and windy and getting dark, I think it was one of the most beautiful places that we saw on our entire trip. And it was nothing but smiles that night after visiting the Diamond Beach and the Glacier Lagoon. So we went to our hotel. We were tired. It had been a long day. And we started the next day with yet another long drive. Today we were going to just backtrack back to Reykjavik. But there were a few places that we didn't see on the way to get to Diamond Beach. So we backtracked, and one of the places we stopped was this beautiful church that has this gorgeous red roof. I don't know, you can't go to Europe without taking pictures of churches. And so we did. And then we went to this another really cool waterfall. We were pressed on time and it was raining. And there were these cool, like you could stay at the base of the waterfall and walk around, or during the summer, I guess you can even walk behind the waterfall. And then there's these stairs that take you to the top of the waterfall. And there's a really long trail, like a long hiking trail in Iceland. It's the Langaver Trail. I didn't say that correctly, but it's a trail I want to do. And the start of that trail is actually at this location on those stairs. So our guide was like, hey, nobody take the stairs because you only have a half an hour here. Nobody has time to get to the top of the waterfall. And I was like, watch me, because you don't tell me not to do something like go to the top of a waterfall. Of course, I'm going to go to the top of the waterfall and you're going to have to wait for me. So I hustled to the top of the waterfall, took a quick picture, caught my breath, and then hustled down, and I still had 10 minutes to go. So it's only a 4-minute walk up to the top of the waterfall. So just do it. If your guide's like, you can't do it, then say, just believe in me, bro, because I know I can do it. Anyway, this is a cool waterfall. Go check it out. And then we finally made it all the way back to Reykjavik. And this was another high point of the trip. Originally, we were scheduled to go to the Blue Lagoon, which is one of the most, if not the most famous hot springs in Iceland. But there was a last minute change to our schedule, and we ended up going to the Sky Lagoon instead, which I was pretty stoked about because, as you can see, it was pretty gorgeous. This lagoon, just hot springs, so pretty. There was a bar, so you could, like a swim up bar. It's raining, it's blowing wind in our faces, and we're all enjoying a cocktail in this swim up bar at this beautiful lagoon. You can see nothing but smiles. There was a waterfall there. There was also this cool like 6-step ritual where you do a cold plunge, sauna, then like body scrub, then the steam room, and all these things. And so it was fun to just kind of pamper ourselves at the lagoon. So I didn't go to the Blue Lagoon, but I did go to the Sky Lagoon, and the Sky Lagoon was pretty awesome. And my husband's not like a hot springs guy, but I sent him a picture and he was like, we have to go there. So Sky Lagoon is cool. And that takes us to the next day. So we've done like the southern part of Iceland, and now we're headed up north to the peninsula. You can see our route here. And our first stop was, of course, another waterfall. And it was beautiful. We walked around, checked out this waterfall, and then we came to another tragic place here. So what is kind of sad about this place is I feel like there's just so much tragedy. This was a Viking settlement, one of the earliest Viking settlements in Iceland. And I forget when, probably in the 1700s, I'm sure it says that on the sign, there was a family that lived on one side of the water, and then there was a church on the other side of the water. And the family had 2 little boys, and the parents were going to go to church on Christmas. And so they told the boys, stay at home, don't cross the water, or there was a land bridge over the river. So they said, like, don't cross the bridge over the water, but the kids crossed the bridge over the water, and they slipped and fell and drowned. So tragic yet again. And then the mom discovered that the children had drowned in the water, and so she put a curse on this natural land bridge, and she cursed the bridge, and then the bridge was destroyed by an earthquake. And then now it's called the Barnafoss, which is children's falls. So I loved that our guide would tell us these stories and all of these legends as we were driving, and it was a really beautiful, beautiful place. The next thing we did was go check out some geothermal baths, because once again, this is the hot springs, or the hot springs tour of Iceland. So you can see us here enjoying the baths at, where am I? At Krama hot springs. And then that night, we actually went to this neat place. We stayed at a horse breeding farm that has some different like lodges set up. And so you can see these beautiful mountains at this place where we stayed that night. And then that was Eduardo, our chef for the night, who cooked us lamb and fish, which was delicious. And you can see the whole group there enjoying dinner, and then the beautiful scenery that night. And then the next morning we were up bright and early because we had to do the long drive back to Reykjavik. But first we had to stop and see the Black Church. And what do I know about the Black Church? The Black Church was built and then it was torn down, and then it was rebuilt, and then it was moved. So lots of moving around, but this Black Church is also one of the most photographed churches in Iceland. And then we went on this amazing coastal walk right along the water. You can see how rugged the landscape was. They had these amazing pathways. So we just followed these paths along the coast. And honestly, we could have spent all morning there, but you can see this natural bridge on the left-hand side of your screen. You can see the beautiful mountains in the background. It was just simply beautiful. I wanted to spend all day there. You can see how nice the trails were, the little pathways along this coast. And then we ended up here. This is the most photographed mountain in Iceland. And of course, more waterfalls. Finally, we stopped at an art studio. Our guide was buddies with a guy who does a lot of really neat art. That is the Viking symbol for protection. It's not a snowflake. I thought it was a snowflake. It's not a snowflake. And then we made it back to our hotel in Reykjavik. We enjoyed a really delicious dinner. And then our guide said, hey, the sky's clearing up. We haven't seen the Northern Lights yet. Do you guys want to go see if we can find the Northern Lights? So we drove a short distance outside of Reykjavik to this beach and this lighthouse. And you can see how the clouds parted and the sky just lit up. It was so beautiful. The Northern Lights came out, and it was just like the cherry on top of an incredible, beautiful trip to Iceland. So that was our trip to Iceland. Everybody made it home. Everybody's been sharing photos. Everybody's been talking about how fun the trip was. And I just want to say, if you would like to join us for an adventure, our next adventure is to Costa Rica. It's going to be a lot warmer than Iceland was. Like, you won't need your puffy jacket and your warm boots in Costa Rica. You'll need your swimming suit and your flippy flops because we're going to have a ton of fun. I haven't checked yet, but before our trip to Iceland, we had 3 rooms available. So you could either book your own room for a little extra, or you could share with somebody or bring a friend. I'm not sure if those 3 rooms are still available or not, so I will let you know. We're headed to Southern Utah in June. This is going to be a national parks tour. We're going to see 4 national parks. This trip to Southern Utah is sold out, but we usually have a cancellation or 2. So if you want to go with us to Southern Utah, then head on over to our website, hikelikewoman.com, and you can get on our wait list just in case there is a cancellation. We're headed to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in August. I love climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I lead a trip up Kilimanjaro every single year, so we are going back to Mount Kilimanjaro. We're going to be doing the 7-day Machame route. We're going to have John, which is my favorite guide and the best guide on the mountain. We have 6 more spots open for that Kilimanjaro climb. We're 6 months out. You have plenty of time to train and get ready to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro with us. So if that interests you, we'd love to have you. And then finally, we're headed to Patagonia in October. This is going to be a hiking trip. So we're going to be staying in hotels, but we're going to be doing some really incredible day hikes, glacier walks, boat tours, all the really cool things. We did have 2 cancellations for our Patagonia trip, so that means that 2 spots are open. So if you'd like to join us in Patagonia, head to our website, hikelikewoman.com. And finally, we are kind of changing the way that we run trips here at Hike Like a Woman. I say we, it's me. I do have an assistant who kind of does a little bit of admin work on the side. But what you need to know is in 2026, our schedule is locked in. We are going to be going back to South America. We're going to be doing some hiking in the Alps. We're going to be doing Kilimanjaro again, and Well, what else are we doing? Oh, we're going to be headed to Scotland. So right now I'm working with a new company to help design these trips and put these trips together. So stay tuned. Booking for those trips is going to be a year out, but I just want to give you that visibility. So if you have limited budget and limited time off, you can say, okay, hey, I really want to do Europe, Tour de Mont Blanc in July of 2026. I'm just going to budget for that trip. So it's not like, so you just have some visibility of when we're going on these trips and all that kind of stuff. And if you have questions about any of our adventures, I do make myself available. I'm happy to hop on a free 15-minute phone call with you to tell you about our trips and also to help you decide if a certain trip may or may not be a good fit for you, because our trips are not made, they're not for everybody. Each trip kind of has a different, unique thing about it. Another thing that I've started doing is some Kilimanjaro coaching. So there's a lot of people who are interested in climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, but they can't go with us, or they want to do a different route or whatever. And so if you're interested in climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, but you're not climbing with us, and you want to hop on a coaching call with me, I'm happy to do that. All the information, once again, is over on our website, and you can learn about Kilimanjaro coaching there too. And finally, you're probably watching this on our YouTube channel, so thank you for subscribing. And we're working really hard behind the scenes to grow our YouTube, because I want to make sure, but before you go on a trip with me, that you know me, and I think you get to know me when you see me on YouTube, and then when you hear me over on our podcast, the Hike Like One podcast. We post videos on our YouTube channel every Monday and Friday, and then we drop a podcast episode on Tuesdays. So that is our trip to Iceland in a nutshell.